Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Diriye Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevayam Bhagavati Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So continuing with the discussion on Sri Chaitanya Chaitamrita Adi Lila, chapter 16, the pastimes of the Lord in his childhood and youth, text 81 onwards. So we are still discussing that shloka that Keshav Kashmiri composed in glorification of the Ganges, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu found faults with it and found good points also with it. Ishvara achintya shaktya gangara prakasha ihate virodha nahi virodha abhasa. In this birth of the Ganges by the inconceivable potency of the Lord, there is no contradiction, although it appears contradictory. So, birth of the Ganges. Why? Verse before, it is said, the existence of Mother Ganges begins from the lotus feet of the Lord. Although this statement that water comes from a lotus flower is a contradiction. In connection with Lord Vishnu, it's a great wonder. The central point of all Vaishnava philosophy is to accept the inconceivable potency of Lord Vishnu. What sometimes appears contradictory from a material viewpoint is understandable in connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because he can perform contradictory activities by dint of his inconceivable potencies. Modern scientists are puzzled. They cannot even explain how such a large quantity of chemicals has formed the atmosphere. Scientists explain that water is a combination of hydrogen and oxygen. But when asked where such a large quantity of hydrogen and oxygen came from and how they combined to manufacture the great oceans and seas, they cannot answer, because they are atheists who will not accept that everything comes from life. Their thesis is that life comes from matter. So for them, life is a combination of amino acids at certain temperature and certain conditions. But this is what Prabhupada told one of his scientist disciples, that what if we give you all the chemicals, can you produce life? But they said no. So life comes from life. Matter comes from life. Matter does not, life does not come from matter. And this water example that Prabhupada has given, large quantity of hydrogen and oxygen, and scientists, they have analyzed the molecule of water. So it is H2O. So O and two atoms of hydrogen. But they are connected, the hydrogen atoms are connected at 104.5 degrees, precisely. Who made it? That's a question. Who made it at that angle precisely? And that is one molecule, means all the molecules, and the molecules together, when they are connected, they make the element, water. So who made it? Can we make it in lab? The amount of water that we have, even in a bucket? No. Scientists cannot even make one molecule of water. And we think we know everything. Where do all these chemicals come from? The answer is that they're produced by the inconceivable energy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Living entities are part of the Supreme Godhead, and from their bodies come many chemicals. For example, the lemon tree is a living entity that produces many lemons, and within each lemon is a great deal of citric acid. Therefore, if even an insignificant living entity who is but a part of the Supreme Lord can produce So much of a chemical. How much potency there must be in the body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And this lemon tree, Prabhupada gave an example of lemon tree producing lemons. But the lemon tree doesn't even know how the lemons are coming out of it. And in perfect shape, every lemon is giving the same taste. And anything like lemon or orange, if we look at, we peel the skin, they're in perfect pieces, all the citric acid. And when we open one piece of, say, orange, and the citric acid or whatever the liquid is, it's in small, small, small bags. Very good packaging done. And no manufacturing plant inside the plant. It just grows. And those bags, if we look at it, full of juice, but the skin is all eatable. It's edible. You can eat it with the packing. Even we haven't been able to create a packing that we can eat it. Isn't that amazing? And not just eat it. Now it has citric juice in it. It has fiber. The skin has fiber in it. It helps our body in every way. This is really looking at things that, yes, somebody who has made it, it must be super intelligent. And now, because we got some intelligence, some little minute intelligence, we try to make that orange without seeds. Krishna had put seeds in there for certain reason. But we want to make orange without seeds because it's very uncomfortable to eat an orange with seeds, then you have to remove the seeds. It's very uncomfortable. But Krishna has put those seeds in there for some reason. Just leave them in there. Don't mess with it. But no, this is what scientists do. Then how are we going to grow more orange trees without the seeds? But then for that, we have to go back to those scientists or the companies that are hoarding the seeds. What kind of logic is that? And this is all because we don't believe in God. They don't believe in God. If they did, they wouldn't be messing with the nature of God. Scientists cannot perfectly explain where the chemicals of the world are manufactured, but one can explain this perfectly by accepting the inconceivable energy of the Supreme Lord. There is no reason for denying this argument. But this is what the scientists, oh, you guys just, oh, this inconceivable energy of the Supreme Lord. Explain how it is done. Well, we don't have to explain. It's inconceivable. And what's the point even if somebody figures it out? Oh, then what? Since there are potencies in the living entities who are samples of the personality of Godhead, how much potency there must be in the Supreme Godhead himself? As described in the Vedas, Nityo Nityanam Chetnas Chetnam. He is the chief eternal of all eternals and the chief living entity among all living entities. In Katha Upanishad, that is said. So he is the chief eternal of all eternals. Unfortunately, atheistic science will not accept that matter comes from life. Scientists insist upon the most illogical and foolish theory that life comes from matter, although this is quite impossible. They cannot prove in the laboratories that matter can produce life. Yet there are thousands and thousands of examples illustrating that matter comes from life. Therefore, in Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that as soon as one accepts an inconceivable potency, of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. No great philosopher or scientist can put forward any thesis to contradict the Lord's power. This is expressed in the following Sanskrit verses. But the scientists will not believe in this inconceivable potency. Ambujam ambuni jatam kvachitapi na jatam ambujadambu mura bhidi tad viparitam padam bhojan mahanadi jata. Everyone knows that lotus flowers grow in the water, but water never grows from a lotus. All such contradictions, however, are wonderfully possible in Krishna. The great river Ganges has grown from his lotus feet. I don't know why we say great river Ganges. Why? It should be river Ganga. Why Ganges? It's just British. They have given this name for their convenience. I mean, if somebody's name is whatever, why? Just because it's in English, it's little inconvenient. Why we change it? Why do we change it? It's not that inconvenient to say Ganga. Gangara Mahatva Sadhya Sadhanatahara Vishnu Padotapatti Anumana Lankara. The real glory of Mother Ganga is that she has grown from the lotus feet of Lord Vishnu. Such a hypothesis is another ornament called Anuman. It's an ornament. It's a good thing. Sthule Panchadosh Panchalankara Sukshma Vichariye Yadi Achaya Apara. I've simply discussed the 5 gross faults and 5 literary embellishments of this verse. But if we consider it in fine detail, this is what Mahaprabhu said. If we consider it in fine detail, even more detail, we'll find unlimited faults in one verse. Pratibha kavitya tumar devata prasade avichara kavya avashya pade dosha bade. You have achieved poetic imagination and ingenuity by the grace of a worshipable demigod. But poetry not well reviewed is certainly subject to criticism. Vichari kavittu kaile hai sunar mala, shalankar haile artha kare jhalamala. Poetic skill used with due consideration is very pure, and with metaphors and analogies, it's dazzling. Shuniya Prabhur Vyakya Digvijay Vismita Mukhe Naniha Share Vakya Pratibhasam Stambhita. After hearing the explanation of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the champion poet was struck with wonder. His cleverness stunned, he could not say anything. Obviously. Kahite chahai ke chunai se utara, tabe vichare mane haye fangfara. He wanted to say something, but no reply would come from his mouth. He then began to consider this puzzle within his mind. Paduya balak kaila mor buddhi lopa, jani saraswati more kariya chinakopa. This mere boy has blocked my intelligence. I can therefore understand that Mother Saraswati has become angry with me. In Bhagavad Gita, it is clearly said that all intelligence comes from the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is situated in everyone's heart as Paramatma. The Paramatma gave the Pandit the intelligence to understand that because he was proud of his learning and wanted to defeat even the Supreme Lord, by the will of the Lord and through the agency of Mother Saraswati, he had been defeated. One should not therefore be too proud of one's position. Even if one is a greatly learned scholar, if he commits an offense to the lotus feet of the Lord, he will not be able to speak properly in spite of his learning. In every respect, we are controlled. Our only duty, therefore, is to surrender always to the lotus feet of the Lord and not be falsely proud. Mother Saraswati created this situation to favor the champion Pandit so that he might surrender unto Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So she created this situation. And of course, so far Keshav Kashmiri never came across the Supreme Lord. So now all his pride was smashed. ये व्याख्या करिला से मनुष्य नाहि शक्ति निमाई मुखे रहे बाले आपने सरस्वती. The wonderful explanation the boy has given could not have been possible for a human being. Therefore, Mother Saraswati must have spoken personally through his mouth. So this is what he is thinking. But Nimai is even Lord of Mother Saraswati. Ete bhavi kahe shun Nimai pandita, tav vyakya shuni ami haila vismita. Thinking thus, the Pandit said, my dear Nimai Pandit, please hear me. Hearing your explanation, I'm simply struck with wonder. Alankara nahi pada, nahi shastra bhyasa. Kemane sabha artha karile prakash. I'm surprised. You're not a literary student and do not have long experience in studying the Shastras. How have you been able to explain all these critical points? Iha shuni Mahaprabhu ati bada rangi, tahar hriday jani kahe kari bangi. Hearing this and understanding the Pandit's heart, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu replied in a humorous way. Shashrera vichara bhala mand nahi jani, Saraswati balaye se balivani. My dear sir, I do not know what is good composition and what is bad, but whatever I have spoken must be understood to have been spoken by Mother Saraswati. Iha shuni digvijay karila nishchaya, shishudvare devi more kaila parajaya. When he heard this judgment from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Pandit sorrowfully wondered why Mother Saraswati wanted to defeat him through his small boy. Aji tare nivediva kari jap dhyana, shishu dware kaila more tarapaman. I shall offer prayers and meditation to the goddess of learning. The champion concluded and asked her why she has insulted me so greatly through this boy. Vastuta Saraswati Ashuddha Shloka Kareila Vichara Samayatara Buddhiya Chadila. Saraswati had in fact induced the champion to compose his words in an impure way. Furthermore, when it was discussed, she covered his intelligence, and thus the Lord's intelligence was triumphant. Means Lord, obviously Lord was going to win. Tabe shishya gana save hasite lagila, tasaba nishedi prabhu kavire kahila. When the poetic champion was thus defeated, all the Lord's disciples sitting there began to laugh loudly. But Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked them not to do so, and he addressed the poet as follows. Tumi bada pandit maha kavi shiromani, yara mukhe bahiraye, aiche kavyavani. You're the most learned scholar and the topmost of all great poets. For otherwise, how could such fine poetry come from your mouth? तुम्हारा कवित्व ये न गंगा जल धारा तोमा सम कवि कोठा नाहि देखियारा. Your poetic skill is like the constant flow of the waters of the Ganges, of the Ganga. I will say Ganga. I don't want to say Ganges. I find no one in the world who can compete with you. Bhavabhuti Jayadev Ar Kalidas Tasa Bare Kavitve Ache Doshera Prakasha. Even in the poetic compositions of such great poets as Bhavabhuti, Jayadev, and Kalidas, there are many examples of faults. Dosha guna vichare alpakari mani, kavitva karane shakti taha seva khani. Such mistakes should be considered negligible. One should see only how such poets have displayed their poetic power. In Srimad Bhagavatam, it is said that Vag Visargo Janataga Viplapo. In explaining the glories of the Lord, inexperienced men may compose poetry with many faults, but because it contains glorification of the Lord, great personalities, read it, hear it, and chant it. Despite its minute literary discrepancies, one must study poetry on the merit of its subject matter. So, according to Vaishnava philosophy, any literature that glorifies the Lord, whether properly written or not, is first class. There need to be no other considerations. The poetic compositions of Bhavbhuti or Shrikanta include Malati Madhav, Uttar Charit, Veer Charit, and many other Sanskrit dramas. This great poet was born during the time of Bhojaraj as a son of Nilakanta, a Brahmin. And then Kalidas flourished during the time of Maharaj Vikramaditya, and he became the state poet. He composed some 30 or 40 Sanskrit dramas, including Kumar Sambhav, Abhigyana Shakuntala, and Meghdut. His drama Raghuvansha is especially famous. So we have already discussed Jaydev. Sheshav Chapalya Kichu Nala Beyamara, Shisher Saman Mui Nataha Tamara. I'm not even fit to be your disciple. Therefore, kindly do not take seriously whatever childish impudence I have shown. So this is how humble Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was. Aji Vasha Yaha Kali Miliva Bar Shuni Bato Mar Mukhe Shasrera Vichar. Please go back home, and tomorrow we may meet again so that I may hear discourses on the Shastras from your mouth. Ei mate nij ghare gela dui jana, kavi ratre kaila saraswati aradhan. In this way, both the poet and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went back to their homes, and at night the poet worshipped Mother Saraswati. Saraswati swapne tare upadesh kahila, sakshat Ishwar kari prabhu ke janila. In a dream, the goddess informed him of the Lord's position, and the poetic champion could understand that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is the supreme personality of Godhead himself. Prateyasi Prabhu Pade Laila Sharana, Prabhu Kripa Kaila Tara Khandila Bandhan. The next morning, the poet came to Lord Chaitanya and surrendered unto his lotus feet. The Lord bestowed his mercy upon him and cut off all his bondage to material attachment. Actually, this was the real mercy of Mother Saraswati and Keshav Kashmiri. That finally he met Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and he was defeated by Mahaprabhu, and then he took shelter of the lotus feet of Mahaprabhu. The real mercy was not that he became Digvijay, he just defeated everybody. That wasn't a real mercy. The same process advocated by Lord Shri Krishna in his teachings of Bhagavad Gita, as it is, surrender unto me in all instances, was advocated by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The champion surrendered unto the Lord, and the Lord favored him. One who is favored by the Lord is freed from material bondage. So that is a real favor, not increasing our material bondage. Bhagyavanta Digvijay Safal Jivan Vidya Bale Paila Mahaprabhu Charan. The poetic champion was certainly most famous. His life was successful by dint of his vast learning and erudite scholarship, and thus he attained the shelter of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. I'll just go over this purport. We can read it because I want to complete this chapter today. Ei Saba Lila Varni Yachin Vrindavan Das Yekichu Visheshiha Karila Prakasha. Srila Vrindavan Das Thakur has described all these incidents elaborately. I have only presented the specific incidents he has not described. Chaitanya Gosai Lila Amritera Dhara Sarvendriya Tripta Hai Shravane Jahara. The nectarian drops of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's pastimes can satisfy the senses of everyone who hears them. Shri Rupa Raghunath Pade Jara Chaitanya Charitamrita He Krishna Das. Praying at the lotus feet of Shri Rupa and Raghunath, always desiring their mercy, I, Krishna Das, narrate Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita, following in their footsteps. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita Adi Lila, 16th chapter, describing the pastimes of the Lord in his childhood and youth. So tomorrow we'll start the last chapter of Adi Lila, chapter 17, the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in his youth. Okay, so we'll stop here. See anybody has any questions or comments?
Nice chapter, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mata.
Very interesting.
Yeah, it's very sweet. His pastimes are very sweet.
Very good. And another
can
thing,
be
Prabhuji, sorry,
Hmm?
somebody was saying something.
क्या कह रहे माता?
मैं बोली थी लॉर्ड की जगह पे ना we should just start saying भगवान. Lord also gives the feeling of British Empire. कोई खड़ा टोपी पहन कर तलवार लेके.
Yeah,
Just
but
change
that
this into the भगवान, you know. Lord बहुत हो गया. Ganges तो
yeah,
change
but
हो गया
that
गंगा में.
Devan.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you, Mother. So you all have a safe and
thank you,
wonderful day.
Prabhuji.
Jai Shri
Hare
Ram.
Thank you.
Krishna. Thank you.